Well, hello there everybody. Andy Spoons here. I hope this finds you well. So today I'm just going to be talking through my process for axing out a spoon blank. Here I'm using some Silky Oak, which has been sitting seasoning for about 6 months. And I'm basically starting on the underside of the spoon. So you can see me basically freeing up the fibers with the axe and then taking kind of longer, broad strokes. That's a bump cut, a safer cut to lift both of the pieces of material if your axe tends to get bound in the wood. And yeah, basically just making my way through the back of the spoon. This is working on the crank now, and I'm using just an axe. You can use a saw to make this basically at the lowest point of the spoon. Here I am just basically axing out a V shape in the crank section, and then once I've cut down to that section where I'm happy, as you can see here, I basically start working from up at the end of the handle. If I'm teaching, I definitely recommend only axing up about 3/4 to the absolute maximum back up the spoon, because I am quite comfortable working with the axe. I do tend to axe relatively close to my hands. I'd be the first to admit that, but you'll see my thumb is sitting back behind the edge of the wood. So here I am axing out the, I guess the bowl section of the crank. Pretty easy work there. And it does look like my arm is closer to the axe than it actually is. You'll see every time I'm holding the wood, I'm making sure that my hand isn't kind of reaching over the edge of the wood. My axe is never coming close into contact with my hand. I work freehand with all of my spoon carving, so that means I don't use a template. I don't have a preset shape of spoon, so right now I'm basically just mapping out what kind of spoon I'm hoping to get out of this. It'll be a kind of a large mouth eating spoon, I guess you could call it. So I start with the center line, and then I tend to work with the back curve of the spoon, because that's often the trickiest to get the clean, rounded shoulders. There's always some organic curve, I guess you could say, to a spoon when you're doing it this way. But I personally think that's where a lot of the charm comes from. But yeah, I work and make sure that things are pretty symmetrical. It doesn't need to be perfect at this point, because I'll be axing into these lines quite a bit. And then here I am starting to thin out the bulk material off the sides, and so I tend to work down at an angle to the base. And I'll kind of just be editing through this so that you're only seeing the line side for the most part. Here I am axing through the top end of the spoon. I tend to work into the line and then let it push away from the line, if that makes sense. I let the axe kind of push away from my line. I'm doing a little guillotine cut, I guess you could call it, where I position the nose of the axe, the tip of the axe, and then I pull down on the heel, or in this case I rotate the other direction, so position the heel and then push down to the tip. It just gives you a little more accuracy. Here I am axing in the shoulders. In the same process as the crank, you keep a relatively loose hand on the axe, just so that you're not really forcing it in there. I do a lot of bump cuts on this section, just because once you've buried your axe in the grain, you usually want to just kind of continue pushing through to that spot. And you can see that chips away pretty nicely, because I've already basically carved out the V right by that shoulder. You really want to make sure that you don't axe too hard into the back of the bowl, or else you've basically just created some really lovely meditative firewood. The axe I'm using here is my Gransfors Bruk large Swedish carver, which is one of my first carving axes. His name's Clyde. I'm kind of working through the back section of the shoulder here as well. Just really light cuts. You don't need to do massive swings in this area. And then here, what I'm doing is basically refining from the back of the bowl along the shoulder and then back down the back of the spoon. It's pretty nice to get that bulk out of the way so that I don't have to do it with the knife. And then here I am just severing the fibers on the very back of the handle to make it easier for me to remove later. And that's all there is. So you can see there, that's the spoon blank, and here is the finished Silky Oak spoon. So I've obviously taken it to the knife and finished everything up, added some oil, and that's all there is. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.